from Cultura Media House. Brought to you by 786 Sports. It's an Big League Show with Adrian Lorenzo. And now batting, here he is, Danny Enriquez.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to El Big League Show. Happy to be talking about a team that, Adrian, feels like a big league team, but really is a college baseball team. So we're switching it up a little bit. We're going to the college ranks for our team profile, but I think it's worthwhile, Adrian, with the LSU Tigers, 8-time national champions, just finished their latest. What do you see when you look at this ball club?
What a run. What a run before even this year, honestly. So like this is like just another extension of what really is it's our dynasty within college baseball right now. They're top dog, even though Tennessee won last year and that was a good notch on their belt. But LSU, to me, as far as collegiate baseball is concerned, as well as, and we'll get to this because it's connected, I think the pipeline of players to the major league, quality major league players, I don't think any other school has the argument that LSU had, and then especially has in this moment, especially with Skenes, obviously Bregman and guys like that. The list is long of guys that have gone through that program and are impact big leaguers right now. So I don't know. They seem to have it going more than any other college program, and honestly, sound like they have more going than some professional organizations. So it's really like the 31st team of Major League Baseball, right? Like you could probably line up that LSU team against major league teams, and to me, it'll be the team that's closest versus all the other collegiate programs. And I think that's saying a lot. And they might even have some, true upside guys as well. It's like I don't know, we could dive into it, but they seem to have it going on all fronts here. I think they recruit exceptionally well. They hit the recruiting hard. Like high school side, they get the best players. Portal side, they get the best players, like Daniel Dickinson with them this year and other players from the portal. But they hit the portal hard. They hit the high school side hard, and they have that player development component. So like you're getting in the best talent, and then you're also developing that talent at a high level, not just for collegiate wins, but for major league production, which goes back to the recruiting. The biggest sell there, he said it not too long ago in one of those press conferences, is like, if you're a pitcher and you don't want to be at LSU right now, what are you thinking? And as much as I wanted to react strongly to that and be upset about it, I had to do nothing but respect it, because it's true. You watch Paul Skenes up there right now. He's kind of our generation's pitcher, really. Like if you're watching baseball in this span, like contemporary baseball,
No doubt.
He's the dude in addition to schoolboy, but like that's what premier stuff looks like. And that came to LSU as a transfer from Air Force that wasn't that entity going into it, and then came out of that the best pitcher of this current generation right now. And then they had the number 2 pick just to kind of, with Dylan Cruz and making his breakthrough here. Just they're firing on all cylinders, and it's hard to give them anything but respect right now. But this goes back, like, which we could get into, and you and I talked about this before. They've had this history for quite a while now. So as far as college baseball programs are concerned, as biased as I am toward the University of Miami's history and baseball program, LSU's probably got the strongest contemporary argument of any program right now, over 15 years.
Yeah, and look, they've done good with coaches from around here, right? Mm-hmm. Skip Bertman, Miami Beach high grad, right down the street from my house. Also Paul Maneri from Columbus, right? So they've had some success with Miami coaches. Obviously now going to the West Coast for Coach Johnson's doing a terrific job. But I wanted to, before we get into some of the history, I really want to talk about Cade Anderson, because we're going to do a lot of draft stuff here in this lead up here. We're going to get some announcements coming soon. So if you're a draft fan, we are really diving deep this year, give you some perspective, again, from Adrian's perspective as a 2-time World Series champ, former MLB exec, on just the whole process and just taking you behind the curtain of the draft. But we're not going to wait long to talk about Cade Anderson, and no one player wins any one of these games, any one of these championships, certainly in this sport particular. Yep. But when you go complete game in the College World Series, 10 strikeouts, that's about as close as you can get to single-handedly winning for your team.
Yep.
What do you see when you look at Cade Anderson? Forget the college, because that chapter's been written, but as a potential pro.
I'm going to quote somebody who I respect a lot, Stan Meek. He was a longtime scouting director, longtime cross-checker, always said, like, watch out for the ones long, loose, and left-handed. Like, those are the ones, like, you know, stack as many of those as you can. And he jumps out at me as that with power stuff. I see him, and I really, somebody said Max Fried as their comp for him, and I haven't been able to unsee it once they said it. And so the more I look at it, the more it feels very Max Fried-ish, with command, with fastball components that even if the velocity, I think he was averaging 92 in that game, but the fastball plays better than where that velocity sits. So you have left-handed with good fastball qualities and command. Those are the things that need to happen for you to float to the top of a draft chart, which it looks like he's positioned. He's gotten the most hype to be 1-1 right now of anybody. So obviously you doing that in Omaha only further cements that. And if you were in the consideration for the 3 to 5 pick and you do that in front of every scouting director in the country, I can see how he gets into this 1-1 pick. And these are millions of dollars in the gaps between 1, 2, 3, and 4. So good for Cade. But I see Max Fried. I see that projection. Max Fried just got a big deal with the Yankees, got all the way to free agency after just a brutal run where I felt like he killed us in every Brave start when I was with the Marlins. So big respect to that player, but also watched how a player with what you think is not elite stuff because it's not velocity, but it's left-handed with command, with shape to the breaking ball, ability to use the changeup as well. So you have a weapon against righties. I watched that be so effective against the Miami Marlins for such a stretch with Max Fried, and then to have him go out and extend that now, doing it for the Yankees and stuff. So I think you can grab, in the draft room, you can grab Max Fried, have him up right in front of you, and then be looking at this guy and feel like you might even have a chance to be like as good or better. And so that's just what I see. It's just a clean left-handed arm swing that works. Throw strikes, shape to the breaking ball. And I'll bet he has underlying fastball qualities that, because you can't, like, if he didn't have good fastball qualities, first of all, I don't think he'd get the output that he gets. And second, I don't think MLB teams would value him where they value him, which is at the very top of the draft right now. We're in this time where you can't just velocity your way through everybody's eyes. Like, front offices, scouting departments, analytics departments, they're all able to see through velocity. Velocity is great. You want both. You want velocity and quality of stuff. But I think this is showing that you cannot be at the elite velocity range, and the industry knows you're still at premium top of the market scale value. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it kind of, in this day and age, it's more prevalent. You can't sneak into the top of a draft just by throwing 101. If you have a 101 average fastball and your fastball movement grade is really in the more 30 to 40 on the scouting range side, so a below average movement fastball, really hard for a team to think this is viable at the big league level. But if you have both, that's where it skyrockets. And then you do this in the College World Series and you cement that. So good for him, and obviously good for LSU. This is the best recruiting pitch you have.
I think back to Tyler Kolek, 102. Getting drafted to the Marlins number 2. I don't believe he ever breached even the high minors. At least I didn't see it. So
this was before TrackMan, though. I think for the Marlins in that era, I think this was before the TrackMan era. In the TrackMan era, that kind of stuff, somebody along the way in your analytics group or just in your overall executive group is being like, hey, okay, but how does this fastball play despite the velocity? So whereas before the TrackMan era, and some teams may have already been in it. There's teams that explore this territory 10, 15 years ago when it's first I don't know, it's in its testing phase. Like, teams are further out in front. I don't feel that the Marlins were there because I feel like that red flag would have been thrown up in that process if TrackMan and pitch data was a big part of your whole thing. So it makes sense why you would take Tyler Kolek in that era that strong, and it didn't work out in that sense. But what I remember from Tyler Kolek was the movement on the fastball wasn't what you thought for 100 or 99. And this plays a much bigger role nowadays than it did then. Nowadays, like, I'd argue fastball movement may be driving the narrative, if not equal to velocity. And when you have them both, you have them both.
The results speak for themselves. 18 starts, 119 innings, 3.18 ERA, 180 strikeouts, leading the nation. 37.4% strikeout rate, was third among D1 arms, 7.3% walk rate. So, the production is outstanding. You said something about, was it Stan Meek that said you want someone long, loose, left-handed?
Yep.
A lot of lefty starters in this draft. We'll talk about all that as we do the draft build-up. Again, if you're a draft fan, like it, subscribe to this show because we're going to be talking a ton of draft. Jamie Arnold's someone who is projected, another left-handed college star projected as number 1. He's still going to go high. I was at the game against Miami. You had Rizzo right there behind the plate, Washington Nationals GM, just watching that start, which was not his best. Arnold kind of got hit around that day, but he's in the mix there. Seems like there's a lot of good lefties, but this caught my attention. I was going to ask you if you have any insight as to why this might be. Only 6 lefties, pitchers, have ever been first overall. You look at the list, David Clyde didn't really do much. Floyd Bannister, 15-year pro, 70s and 80s, 26 WAR. Brian Taylor, I don't think he made the majors. David Price, of course, you saw firsthand how dominant he could be. Cy Young player. And then Brady Aiken, who didn't make it. So you got 5 lefty first overall picks, assuming, we'll see what happens with K, but 5 preceding him. 2 worked out, 3 really didn't at all. So why do you think there hasn't been more left-handed starters going number 1?
I think that's a really good question. I think, first of all, there's just fewer of them. And I think there's probably a lot of guys that get picked in that 2 to 10 range, 2 to 20 range that have turned out to be dudes, right? For whatever reason, I think the 1-1 comes with its own pressure. 1-1 comes with its own, I think pitchers carry inherent risk more so than position players. If I just put them next to each other, which one of these entities carries more risk? Position players get hurt at a less frequent rate, and also their type of injuries don't seem to be as debilitating as the pitcher injuries. So even when they do get injured on the position player side, even Ronald Acuna, 2 torn ACLs at this point, you still feel good about his ability to come back.
Yeah.
You don't say that about pitcher injuries. You definitely don't say it about shoulder injuries. So I think, but I don't know that a righty, I feel like there should have been more lefties to go 1-1 to that point. That number surprised me, but I think there's just fewer of them, right? And so when there's fewer of them, I'd say significantly so, just less likely to happen. But I think this year's draft will kind of tell you, no, it's kind of the opposite this year. Actually, you have 2 lefties toward the top with this guy, Liam Doyle, and further down the board with Zach Root. And you just have a lot of Jamie Arnold, you mentioned.
Yep.
You just have a lot of good lefties. So I think, I don't know. I hope this is a draft for the lefties that establishes it further and kind of blows that, moniker out of the water.
Well, you mentioned the injuries.
Yep.
If he does go first overall, he'd be the first college pitcher to go first overall that already had Tommy John. So kind of another kind of sign of the times, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think he was like a preventative Tommy John or anything like that. Some of the stuff you hear about, but obviously he had it. It was no issue.
Right.
And he's doing his thing. So
it's very regular right now to be considering a pitcher for draft status, especially for a college pitcher that has already had it. And there's actually a kind of like a twisted, morbid, at least he already had one kind of thing when you're looking at it. So if he did have it, it's almost, I don't know if it's a plus, but it's like, okay, he's able to bounce back from this. Unfortunately, the rate of double Tommy Johns is higher than you want it to be, but it doesn't feel as high as that initial one. So guys seem to be able to get past this Tommy John hurdle, but it's long, man. We're seeing Yuri Perez just come back right now. It's just like a long, slow, you can lose the better part of 2 years. But there's benefits to that. You take care of your arm a little different, I would imagine, after blowing out, right? So you start doing your arm care stuff a little more. You start taking that a little more seriously. You do the in-between outings, the in-between throws, how you focus on getting warm. Paul Skenes, he got kind of famous for those videos of his like however hour-long preparation to start. And yeah, that makes sense. You want to stay healthy in this day and age, it has to be this long process. And if you're not doing that, I would argue that there's a directly correlated percentage to the rate with which you get hurt, with which you get injured. So it is about volume and intensity. We are doing that at higher numbers. Intensity, we're doing at higher levels. Volume, we're not doing at higher levels in terms of pitching workload and things like that. Intensity, I'd argue we are doing some things there. We're doing higher output throws and packed into less outings, but the in-between outing stuff, in my experience, on the player development, on the professional acquisition, major league roster management, the guys that do the stuff between the starts and the boring, mundane arm care stuff every day and volume monitoring and stuff like that, those are the guys that seem to have the most longevity. And even them, it still happens to. But they seem to be able to keep it at bay. And my point is that when a guy goes through that in high school or early in college, you learn that lesson earlier. So you're able to understand that you could come back from this, but also you take care of your arm a little better. Some guys a lot better. Some guys change completely after that experience for the better. And some guys don't get in good enough shape on the other side of it that it can happen again. So long-winded way of saying in this epidemic, there are things you could do in between to help himself. And I think Kate Anderson has kind of leveraged a lot of that.
Two things that jumped out from your answer that just popped in my head. I mean, obviously Shohei Ohtani, we saw him this past week, 102, coming off 2 Tommy Johns.
That's great.
Blew my mind was Jeff Passan saying, I think it was 163 pitches, that speed this year. 160 plus, 102 mile an hour pitches.
Yep.
I mean, talk about times changing, both in terms of your ability to come back from Tommy John, but also just the intensity. You talked about the velocity.
Yep.
It's insane. Like that blew me away. 102 used to be, Chapman or someone good coming in. That was network news. Now it's, I mean, 160 times. That's multiple times a day.
It's the state of baseball right now. And I think it's because of programs like LSU. Like Paul Skenes is in those pitches.
Yep.
So I think it's because of programs like LSU, as well as just pitching overall. We're in this era of pitching optimization. Because pitchers can control the action much more so than the hitters. Hitters, we've talked about this before. It's very reactionary to whatever the pitcher's doing. Pitchers get to set whatever happens, and they're in control of, if they want to go from a 4-seam to a 2-seam or add a 2-seam, they can. If they want to add a cutter, they can. If they want to, maybe the changeup grip they've been using to this point isn't working for them and they go to a splitter grip or a splink or something different, they can do that, and you can do it in an off season, right? And the hitter's doing one specific thing, which is, first of all, react to all those things that the pitchers are doing, but you're not creating a different swing for all those pitches. Pitchers can craft their arsenal today to where they know exactly what they need to throw versus exactly what split, left or right, and which pitches are more effective. And so they're maximizing those outputs. You still got to command the baseball at the end of the day, but we're in this day and age where pitching is, we're maxing things out, in my opinion. And I think our ligaments and our shoulders are telling us that we are, given the rate of injuries, but we're also to me, this is the hardest human beings have been throwing things in the history of human beings. And with pinpoint precision, pitching is incredible. The dots that you have to hit, the spots, the space, the strike zone. I think on TV, it looks big, right? But from a pitcher standpoint, from where they're going, and you put it, I don't know, you look at it, just physics and geometry. You have to put this in this really tight window, including things that move. Like the physics of a breaking ball right now are crazy. Like what you're seeing sweepers do, what you're seeing cutters do, everything moves. Everything has an action, and usually late. But you still got to fit it into this pretty small pocket. And to me, we're in the golden era of human performance from throwing a baseball standpoint, because not only does it come in fast and precise, it also moves crazy within that square that you need to keep it. So it's not surprising to be here. And I think it's just a little easier, in my opinion, for a pitcher to be in control of that. And therefore, with TrackMan data and with info, you can capitalize on these things now. A little bit harder for the hitter to do, I think. That's why pitching's ahead.
This could be a whole show, and we're going to get back to that to LSU. But, I wonder, just in terms of from a front office standpoint, now that you have seen the rate of injury, it's been a while now, but it continues to kind of go up. How do you, even if you're confident that the player will eventually return if they have one, Tommy John or whatever it is, how do you value, for example, Rafael Devers? We heard about his $300 million number, and you're worried about he's only a DH, but you kind of know what you're going to get from the bat, right? He's not going to, how much worse? You don't know, but he's going to hit, right? Yeah. You feel pretty good about that.
He's a pretty sturdy bat right there.
He's not an athletic specimen that you worry about slowing down. He's just
he's got a good approach. He gets on base. There's more ways that he can contribute, than just putting 40 in the seats. So
then $300 million to a guy like Yamamoto. And look, Yamamoto, there's a whole marketing deal. Put that aside. As great as he is, one bad shoulder situation, or even a Tommy John, where it just takes him out a year and a half, that has to have a huge dent in the value that you're getting from the player for that big contract. So do you think that with these injuries becoming basically a fact of life, has there been an appropriate shift in valuation of these pitchers when you're talking about the investment you're putting into them?
I think safe to say no, because first the Dodgers are doing it, right? So they're investing big. Like pitching is just like, it is what it is with the injury stuff. You can't not pitch, right? And then I think the playoff teams show you that you can't not starting pitch in a series. You can't, like, horses are still king. You get into a playoff matchup and you feel like you got a 3-game series, wild card series, you got 2 good pitchers, like 2 horses, you feel really good about that. Now, the everyday player plays every day. So you see him impact the game every day. A starter is every 6 days, every 5 days on short rest, 7 days in a longer case. But the starter you see throughout the course of a year. But ask any big league manager or general manager if it's better to have a stable rotation starter or something that's just a moving piece that you have to roster manage around and piece it together every time. The stability of a horse every so often, I think it gets paid appropriately. So I don't ever think we're going to see this big drop off and like, oh, we're not going to pay pitchers anymore. Because no matter what, the game of baseball is not going to let you get around the fact that you still need a dude to go 7 innings, right? Or like Skubal right now for the Tigers. That it changes the pace and the direction of your organization when you have that. But the injury thing is standing on the other side, the high risk nature of it, like one poor outing, and then with a high value asset like that, you become more careful. So something that another player might pitch through, you pull back the reins on because you know you have future dollars invested and you don't want to risk it. And the problem with that is that they get hurt anyway. So pitching is this hot potato that you just hope you have it in your hands while it's hot. And at some point you're going to get burned with it, but it's just the cost of doing business. I think you have to develop pitching no matter what, because it ends up getting too expensive. But at the end of the day, when you're in a playoff series against the Yankees or the Dodgers and you have Garrett Cole or you have, Max Scherzer in his heyday and guys like that, I don't think it's a stretch to say that those guys are major reasons why they won, So I don't know. It's a long-winded way of answering your question, but I don't think it's ever going to not be valued in an elite kind of territory.
Could we see a situation, because we just saw a couple of years ago, the Marlins draft, I believe, only pitchers for the entire draft. Were you part of that draft?
Yeah, I was.
That was right. I mean,
yep.
It was all pitchers. I don't think did you guys have a single position?
That was the Max Meyer year, right?
I want to say.
Yeah. It was.
It was
the short COVID draft with 5 rounds.
That's what it was.
Pitching,
so straight pitching. And
which
then I know
an advocate of, yeah.
A couple years ago, it wasn't only pitching, but a Thomas White, Noble, it was pitching heavy.
Sure.
Could you see an organization that maybe they have certain limitations, saying we're just going to invest all of our amateur resources in pitching?
Yep. And
then when we're buying, we have much more certainty in the position player that we're spending our money on, that we're not losing. If we're paying him $30 million a year and a half, 2 years, it's a lot of money. That's just, you're getting zero, forget, disappointing value. You're getting zero value because the guy's rehabbing. Could we see an organization are already seeing it, lean more into the amateur side, not just to acquire talent in the organization, but to say, these are guys that we're going to be relying on and, to fill out our staff while we spend money on the position players?
I think developing a core of young starting pitching to be all healthy at the same time, to impact the big leagues at the same time together, is one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable thing you need to do in an organization, juxtaposed by a young core of position players, that are controllable and that are impacting your everyday. So like those two things against each other, I don't see how one overtakes the other. So in terms of a team just kind of going all in on one and punting on the other, you can't.
Just with the idea that you're spending and you know what you're going to get strictly because of the injury.
Right.
It's always, you see these trends.
Yeah.
You adjust to different, like the rules of 20 years ago.
Yep.
You can't have the same playbook because things change.
Yep.
If the pitching injury is the thing that's changed, what behavior is going to change to adapt to that?
I think what you'll see is an organization that will view pitching as a more straightforward, feasible, or accessible way to build a system, to build your system, Like if you feel internally you're just better at seeing pitchers because it's a little more of a straightforward evaluation. Your TrackMan models are good. Your analytics team is good. If you think that that's a strength of yours, you can double down. You can't punt on the position players. But what I think you can do if you have a really talented pro scouting, trade making department, then you can flip those pitching assets, which carry a lot of value, not just when they're in the big leagues, but when they're prospects in your system. So like Thomas White for the Marlins carries huge industry value right now and can flip into a position player that you need. I think some of the better organizations or some of the organizations that you would characterize as pitching heavy, they can't live that way forever. They need to also turn that pitching into position player assets. So make good trades with your, let's say, surplus of starting pitching, which is hard to do overall. You can like really build your position player side with your controllable pitching. So I guess you can live in this pitcher dominant. I think that's where the Marlins lived for the majority of my time there. That wasn't because of any sort of punting on the hitting side. Trust me, finding a core of hitters that can make the conversion to the big leagues, to me, is the hardest thing to do in baseball, even harder than identifying this pitching thing. And I think with the Marlins, it was just a clearer path with sturdy information on what's coming across the plate, coming together with what I thought was a really good intake system of arms where you're like, okay, I see that arm action. We like that arm action. We like the athlete. We want to buy this by the pound. So it's athletic. It throws strikes. And then the model tells you that the stuff plays good. This is a direction to go. And that was more straightforward, in my opinion, than JJ Bleday, for an example. Like JJ Bleday had every indicator that he was going to continue to be a dominant college player, in my opinion. But hitting there's a lot of factors to this, quality of pitching. So I veered off your question, I think, but you can be a pitcher dominant organization. You just need to also find more creative ways to add the position players because you can't not have that. And again, back to the Marlins, I lived that experience where it was at the end of the year, the autopsy said you didn't score nearly enough runs. Sandy, Yuri, Luzardo, like there were eras where the pitching was definitely the strength with prospect depth throughout. But if you don't have it with that position player side or find a way to get them through free agency or trade, then I don't think a team can ever, they have to have a strategy for acquiring position players, even if the pitching is their strength. So that would be what I would say. And then my opinion, I would steer it toward acquiring a pitcher heavy model and then get really good at acquiring major league hitters for temporary amounts of time or for pockets that you need them for. That can be expensive through free agency, but it can also be accessible through trades. You see it every year, a team that makes a smart trade and that position player is impacting their major league roster right now with a prospect piece, and so, yeah, that's how I'd answer that.
Yeah, man. I mean, how much do we hear about, Alonso's value, Devers' value, guys that we know what they're proven commodities and we're still fighting about their value and are they really worth that? But part of it is, well, you kind of know what those guys are going to do.
Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting debate. Brandon's saying that Angels 2-3 years ago went all pitching as well. Kane's cat, who I know follows college baseball extremely close, saying, colleges are also doing that. Look at, some team. I mean, I'm wearing the UM. They had freshman arms doing their thing. Cade, a guy who was a signee. So going back to LSU, just because, a lot of this
team focus.
Yeah. Plays in, obviously Paul Skenes. And there's a question on Paul Skenes we'll get to in a second. But 9 draft picks from LSU in 2024, 2023. We know about Skenes, Dylan Cruz, had 3 other top 100 picks that year. This year, a lot of guys. Anthony Janssen, the righty from UC San Diego, portal guy. Remember when he jumped in the portal? Didn't take long for all the schools to jump on him. Daniel Dickinson, someone we talked about when he jumped in the portal, just what an interesting player he was, a right second baseman out of Utah Valley State. I mean, Utah Valley State, never heard of that school until this guy came on the board. Chase Shores, kind of a different model. I'm just going over top 100 picks they had this year projected. Chase Shores, the top 100 prospect who throws it, incredibly hard, up to 102, but chose to go to college as opposed to entering the draft as a top 100 prospect. So you see a mix with LSU of the portal guys, Paul Skenes being chief among them, and then these highly rated high school guys that they get develop, and then churn out as even better draft picks.
Yeah, it's they're a recruiting machine right now. And I think it's because of a lot of what we just talked about, how well they like finish players off into the big leagues, into the professional baseball ranks, but also they kill it in exactly what you said. I think they have that rare status of having the magnetic pull of the entire, like if you're a good player, if you're the best player, best pitcher, especially best position player, there's a gravitational pull to LSU, or that you should at least consider LSU.
That's Brandon's question. Would you
Right.
call LSU pitching university?
I mean, it's hard to not, right? I think other schools do a really good job, maybe an even better pitching specific job because their program, their process, whatever. But I think LSU has the best total like net outcome in terms of pitchers. So I think they have that argument, but I'd argue that across on the position player side too, you know, and I think that gravitational pull toward yourself allows you to select from the best, as well as what seems to be a very healthy NIL dollar budget to, you know, complement that so that a player can go to LSU and still feel like he's going to be top of market value wise, and with deliverables where it can actually, just because Baton Rouge is it's the only game in town. So like that whole community organizes around this program too. So they're healthy donors, NIL, whatever you want to call it, or however you want to bucket that. But that allows you to play against the draft with your high school pool, especially really like much more easily, where a player can feel like he can go play your program, make a good amount of money, and still come out the other side as a first round pick. Look at the dollar values attached to the first round picks. Like that's life-changing money, in addition to the maybe life-changing money they already received through the NIL. And they have both the high school side and the portal player acquisition. The portal, we're in this fascinating era where the portal opens up a world of opportunity for any team that wants to explore it, because it's the ultimate group, like a big pool of players that at one point were undervalued or underscouted, or Abe Arquette's going to go top 5 picks. And he ended up at Washington. No, you end up at LSU if it's clear in the high school pool that you're going to be one of those picks. That means he wasn't ready to be evaluated at his peak, and that happens. Every player's story is different, but the transfer portal allows that to play out in different stages. Or if a guy was a top high school player and had an elite player playing ahead of him, so like he didn't get that much time, but going in, he was also a very good player. Another team can connect their high school process on that player and be like, hey, we really like this guy, came up short, or he went elsewhere. And now you can kind of jump out in front of that process, identify it. And so the portal gives these guys not only a chance to change the trajectory of all their lives, which I agree with. Like I'm actually not on the side of artificially suppressing when a player can receive life-changing money, when a person can receive life-changing money. And that portal era that we're living in, LSU does at an elite level as well. Part of it's that magnetism, but I think the biggest thing, come here for a year, you're going to develop, and we're going to put you in the first 3 rounds of the draft.
Yeah.
It's a pretty compelling argument.
And it's fun. I mean, you know, we talked about Skip Bertman earlier, who University of Miami guy, Miami Beach High, the guy played and coached under Ron Frazier. One thing that Ron Frazier was known for was that just bringing that promotional energy, that marketing energy to college baseball, making it something that was on TV. They had the cool uniforms, University of Miami on TV. Skip Bertman took that to LSU, along with, of course, all the baseball stuff. We've seen now, look, me minor league baseball in some markets going down, but college baseball going up. I mean, MLB, I think, has been on and up. And you see Savannah Bananas, which is a whole different brand of baseball, obviously not competitive, but certainly they're playing something like baseball, and that's selling out football stadiums. So, you know, it's like there's different ways to sell the sport. And I think with LSU, you're seeing a holistic experience. You can get developed. You can play in front of big crowds.
Elite facilities.
You have great facilities, and you still end up getting drafted very high. And, you know, I don't want to make this an LSU brochure, certainly. You know where I'm representing, but just college baseball in general, I think they're showing a path that if you can make this an operation that is extremely appealing to the best talents in the country, both portal and high school.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess where I'll cap that is that it's a perfect segue using Skip Bertman and Ron Frazier, because what I think they benefit from the most is this continuity of just being a legacy program in the baseball side of things. And that, like, you can't just it's very difficult to turn around a program all of a sudden or within a 3 to 5 year window. LSU also leans on the fact that they've been building this for a long time. And you just have, like, Alex Bregman is sitting in the big leagues. Aaron Nola, like, you can go down this list, and that's it. The continuity helps them get there, but also you have to be good right now and keep being good right now. You can't just rely on that legacy. And so they got both those things going. And as a University of Miami Hurricanes fan overall, it's hard for me to say that, but credit where credit's due.
Yeah, and look, the blueprint came from UM as well. So it's not like you can't do some of the same things in building the program. And I think you see some of that with some of the portal movement of all the teams. I mean, Arkansas had their arms look just as good as LSU's at times. So, I mean, there's this sport in general. We've talked about a ton. It is on the way up, but of course it is all big league show. So I want to talk about a franchise with a very, very illustrious history. Hasn't been there lately, but is starting to make some moves, which is the Cincinnati Reds. And we're going to talk about Nick Martinez. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about there.
Can't wait.
Deep relationship and history with that player. But before we get to Nick Martinez, I want to talk about just, some of their young talent that they have. So really, we just talked about the pitchers, right? And the youth movement at pitcher and potentially drafting, building up your pitching depth by really investing on the amateur side in pitching. And quite frankly, I'm not sure there's a better example than the Cincinnati Reds. So you look at it, obviously we'll talk about Nick Martinez, he's been all over the world. That was a different journey, but Andrew Abbott, 2nd round pick, Nick Lodolo, 7th pick of the draft, Hunter Green, 2nd pick of the draft. Now you're talking about Chase Burns, who was a top 10 pick, absolutely electric. So really 3 top 10 pitchers, 1 second rounder. And they're one of the more exciting young staffs in baseball.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start? I mean, you got a lot to choose from.
I mean, Chase Burns is one of the more exciting ones because you said we will get to Nick Martinez, so I would have started there. But I think this seems to be one of those organizations that's on the pitching side of that spectrum we were talking about. I think if you identified the Cincinnati Reds' strength right now, it's like they're selecting and developing pitching at a high level, and that's where you want to be. But again, you have to do both. So what will they do? How will they score enough runs to kind of catch up to their promise on the pitching side? Ellie De La Cruz is a great start. He's one of the most exciting players in all of baseball, period, and will be for a while here. But, and you have some other interesting position players as well. But to me, this is one of those organizations, pitching seems to be a little bit ahead, and it's because you've hit on those picks. I think people may underestimate, just how much is at stake when you're making a selection in the draft, especially a 1st round pick, and some of them go sideways on you. So the fact that you've timed up a few recent ones to be impacting your big leagues together with Lodolo, with Burns, with Abbott, and even with Green, if you're connecting further drafts before that, they're a pitching heavy organization that is scoring, we'll see, enough runs to be, let me see where they're at right now. So they're 2.5 games back, 5 games back of the division, 5-5 in their last 10. So the Reds they're in that spot. You want to be nearing July where they may have the pitching assets to go out and make a position player acquisition. Or if it goes south on them between now and the end of July, they have pitching assets either way to make moves. I don't think it'll be Burns. I don't think it'll be Lodolo. I don't think it'll be Abbott. But we'll see. They're 2.5 games out, so you can't be out of it right now. If you have pitching in a series, in a wild card series, you can't say, like, I'm out of it in any series, especially when Chase Burns comes up and it's like, okay, this is as advertised. And you're like, okay, that shot of adrenaline in the leg with a young, dynamic, impactful player, I think it bodes well for the Cincinnati Reds making a run here, but we'll see.
And TJ Friedel, one of the more interesting stories. He didn't even know he was eligible for the draft because he redshirted, and he didn't enter the draft, and he gets picked up as a free agent out of the Northwoods League. So it's crazy.
We don't have scouting figured out yet. Not completely.
But Chase Burns, we were talking about the transfer portal. There's another wave of players that are just big program to big program portal guys. Chase Burns being one, transferring to Wake Forest from, I believe, Tennessee.
Yep.
No,
Auburn. Chase Burns?
Yeah.
Oh, I could be wrong. Go ahead.
Yeah. Let me just confirm that. Yeah, he was Tennessee, and then he transfers to Wake Forest. So it's a pretty big place to transfer from. You talk about Liam Doyle. I believe he was at Ole Miss, right, before going and becoming what he became. Braden Montgomery last year, going from Stanford to Texas A&M. So you're seeing not just small school to big school, or maybe I didn't play that much at a big school, but like these are just primetime guys switching schools. It's amazing when you look at what's available in the portal that is premium MLB draft talent on top of, filling out your roster with depth. So that's something to just caught my eye with Chase Burns.
We are in the portal era squarely, and there are so many options for you to improve your team across the spectrum. It isn't just the top tier programs that are getting guys. It's also honestly the mid majors that are identifying the guy who got lost at a big program, right? Because what's happening differently now is the high school recruiting side. Now it seems to make less sense to recruit, or that kids get committed in their freshman, sophomore years, at least on the baseball side, because of the portal. So it's kind of working with that other side of it. So unless rules change fundamentally, it's here to stay. And the teams that lean on it are going to get returns while they're playing for you, as well as getting drafted and having that recruiting thing chip of like, hey, you can come here, develop, and go strong in the draft.
So before we go to this deep dive onto Nick Martinez, I want to put a bow on the Chase Burns discussion. Seeing him throw, you knew he had talent, right? Going against Crochet, I believe, today. What do you see just from the profile, the build? He's not he's not a giant guy, but obviously he throws incredibly hard. The off speed is there. Athletic guy. Tore through the minors. I mean, it's amazing. This guy got drafted. He hadn't been drafted this time last year. He was still working out. Now, I mean, look at all the red there. So what do you see from this player? Just projecting him forward. I know it's early, but just what's kind of your gut like, hey, this is what's unique about this particular player and the way he goes about his business?
I think he does. He combines the command velocity, like plus command of double plus movement, which is what he might have. Maybe it's plus, or plus command of plus movement, is a really sturdy recipe for sustained success. So if you look, we have Baseball Savant doesn't have enough to really, kind of group him correctly, in my opinion. It gives you like this little grade out, but look where he's at, like K percentage for his first outing. Like he didn't, 0 walks, right? So like if you put premium stuff over the plate, especially with strike one, you're going to put yourself in a good category to have major league success. Now, he gave up a couple runs, but like still you can survive. Like, so that's my first thought is, does he throw strikes? Does the pitch package move well? And then, no shit, it's 98 average fastball with, it's grouped toward the top of the zone. So probably has really good ride. I don't know. This is a guy that seems to be operating at the top of his arsenal and is maximizing what he's doing with his pitch movement. So like, I would love to open up the TrackMan data on this guy and just go deeper in terms of exactly what's powering that. But it feels like, at least on first arrival to the big leagues, it looks like it belongs.
And what a draft! What a draft! I mean, you're talking about the high school guys. Connor Griffin's doing his thing. The college guys who, when you going in, Caglioni's in the majors, Kurtz is in the majors, Burns is in the majors, Cam Smith's in the majors, Christian Moore's in the majors. I mean, that draft, that's why I think it's time for people like us to really dive into the draft, because it used to be check in 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are there now making an impact. And I mean, it's not just one anomaly. Yep. You can go up and down that draft.
Right.
Travis Bazzana looks like he's going to be up pretty soon with the way he's hitting.
Yep.
So it doesn't take a long time to see the return, which is exciting as a fan, because that delay takes a little bit of the luster off the draft.
For sure.
Whereas now, I mean, it is right away. Great question from Brandon. He wants to know, do front offices use Baseball Savant?
I think front offices, the best ones, have a proprietary version that's been out before Savant and maybe is positioned a little more friendly to the eyes of what you need to absorb on a quick snapshot. So if I open up Baseball Savant, I can get a general sense of what what's going on here, right? Like Chase Burns is a tough one because he's only had a small window of time in the big leagues. So it doesn't, it's not qualifying it great. But if I'm looking at him from a front office standpoint, I need to know on a quick snapshot a lot more than just this information. Baseball Savant's really good because it takes you to you click the video, the pitches here, and you go right to a video. So the video component is for a quick and dirty like analysis. It's good enough. But I need to know more than just the velocities. I need to know the movement profiles. And I need to know like horizontal break and things like that. And I think the right front offices position that, and they put that right in these where your eyes go right to them. Right. One of the things I miss most about working in baseball is having access to that database where my eyes were trained on where to go, both from like, hey, is this guy good? Why is he good? But also, okay, what's his service time? How many options are remaining? What surplus value is this guy carrying in terms of what industry value does this guy carry? What are his robotically produced or AI produced scouting comps based on his scouting reports and what he does? So it'll give you historical comps. And then financial status, like what's the contract implications, or what's Baseball Savant can't give me an injury transaction history, which I would need to know to kind of really assess. But I think the front office is, if you're quick in a draft room or your phone and you pull something up and you want to just know something quick, Baseball Savant gives you quite a bit. But I think the best organizations, their own internal systems are already doing that, because you have to look at so many pages of players to make decisions that one sheet, that one snapshot ends up being the most important thing. So the organizations that bracket the things that they view as most important, prominently placed, that's where the best ones operate. And Baseball Savant is the closest I've seen to that. So I think it's the closest publicly available thing to really make assessments. And especially because of what I'll add here, right? Like these bar graphs contextualize like in what percentage of the league that player sits. So if Chase Burns is at a 99th percentile, that means I can contextualize percentile, where I think some people get thrown off, like what's a good ex-WOBA? Well, shit, I don't know. But like WRC plus, for example, it works on a 100 scale. Baseball Savant also works on a 100 scale, so you can always properly contextualize. But if I told you, a player's hitting, he's got a 310 on base percentage right now. To the average person, it's kind of like, well, does he get on base? Doesn't he? Like, it's hard to contextualize. Yeah. If I told you he gets on base in the 40th percentile, you're like, oh, that's not that good. Right? Like and I think Baseball Savant
relevant to the
gets
rest
you
of
there.
the league.
Correct. Relevant to the rest of the league based on league averages. So another long-winded answer, but do they use it? Yes, for quick and dirty. The better ones have more sophisticated, and ironically, it's more sophisticated information distilled down into very palatable tidbits.
Or 36 on live. Appreciate you in the chat. Remember, like and subscribe if you are a baseball junkie, want to get in depth on this. I mean, that's what I love about the show. We had an outline, but you kind of go in different directions, and you guys are in the chat. So if you guys have your own questions about what goes on in an MLB front office, do not be shy asking questions. We have some great ones here today. So this is what I know you've been waiting for. I want to save it to the end so we have some room to breathe here and really explore the studio space, as they say, with product of our alma mater, Belen Jesuit, a guy who
shout out Belen Baseball.
Shout out Belen Baseball. Did it the hard way and has sneakily become, one of the more, useful, productive, right-handers. You got over 10 WAR in his career, with a huge chunk of that spent overseas. Four full seasons in Japan, right there in the middle, and it doesn't get the fanfare necessarily that someone who throws 103 miles an hour is going to get. But man, is he valuable to clubs like the Cincinnati Reds. Team USA pitcher as well in the World Baseball Classic, and just really an inspirational story for a lot of pitchers that had to go the hard route. And that is Nick Martinez. There you see 1.5 WAR already this year, 94 innings pitched, 10.4 for his career. And really, since he came back from Japan there at the turn of the decade, it has been consistent production on the mound. What can you tell me about your friend and somebody who had, your friend, but somebody you just admire their career like a Nick Martinez?
This is probably my favorite story overall in all of baseball. I am biased. Nicky and I do go kind of all the way back to the baseball journey. We played travel ball growing up together. Then we played at the same high school. So he was a teammate. He was 1 year younger than me, but we were teammates throughout high school, and then have remained close through his whole journey, from Fordham to getting selected to all that. And it feels like I always sound biased when I'm making an argument in his case, in his direction, but because he shows at every turn that like where determination, hard work, and athleticism gets you. He was always exceptionally athletic, even when he wasn't physical enough yet to be where he's at now. And now he's physical, athletic, but also ultimate example of guy does the right thing on every item, especially as it relates to how you treat your body, how you like prepare for success, how you get the most out of your stuff, how you reinvent yourself when it's necessary. So Nick Martinez goes from being an infielder in high school, which didn't get a whole lot of run in high school until his senior year, then goes and gets recruited to Fordham, which was also a Jesuit school.
Wait, before that, did he pitch in high school on top of playing in field?
I remember Nicky always being one of the more athletic kids on the field, but always more on the defensive, really good defensive actions, good arm. But I never remembered him pitching in high school at all. He may have done so before that a little bit. And he goes to Fordham mostly as a second baseman, left-handed hitting second baseman with good actions, and then works his way into, he plays, so he's an everyday contributor to Fordham as a position player, but then starts throwing in the seventh, working his way into more of like a closer type role because he started to get more physical. He wasn't ready to be evaluated out of high school like a lot of other players. Goes to Fordham.
It's about just size,
just physically, mentally, emotionally, athletically, like guys hit their strides at different points. And I think Nick started to hit it while he was in college. And so when the draft came around, I still remember the day he called me about the draft. They called him in the 18th round, and I think they offered him $60,000 in the 18th round as a pitcher. And he was a primary position player. And I remember having that discussion with him, and the calculus made sense. I think he had one more year left of school, and so it was like 60 plus to school. And there commenced his journey with the Texas Rangers in the minor leagues. And Nick went into a loaded Texas Rangers system, just a bunch of dudes in there. Kyle Hendricks, Jorge Alfaro. Like if you look at that run for the Texas Rangers, a lot of big leaguers placed from that point in time. But what's interesting about Nick is that he got there really fast, actually. If you look at, despite not pitching very much in college, in the pros, he got to the big leagues very fast because he threw strikes and he can always be available to pitch and pitch like a starter, multiple innings. But he gets to the big leagues, and this was in the era before teams were maximizing pitchers' own arsenals. So I think Nick got to the big leagues in a way where he may have been more sinker slider, only to kind of find his way onto the back of get put on option, big leagues, AAA. He's kind of always on that option train. That's hard to entrench there. And it's also hard to make money there because your service time is always fractured and broken. So you don't ever really get to collect this big service time going up and down. And your options run quickly because you get three options. And if they burn, if you're always on that train, those three options burn. So you get put in the spot. It matters because when you're a player out of options and you're not a top, like a starter or a primary reliever on that team, you can't get optioned when you're out of them. And so a team has to make a decision on, okay, am I going to take this guy off the 40-man roster? Am I going to designate him for assignment? And I think Nicky got put into that territory with the Rangers. And then Japan at that point presents itself as a place to make money and also be a starter again. He could have probably signed a bunch of minor league deals that would have turned into a major league deal, but he makes the bet that I can make more money in Japan. It's right there available to me. And I think Miles Mikolas had just happened at that point. So there's an argument that you could see a path to leaving, coming back, and still making free agency dollars. And I remember Miles Mikolas being that template at the time, making the decision. But it's still a gamble to go, now you move your entire family out to Japan just to live a life. And I think he gets to Japan and realizes he has to really fundamentally shift the way he's attacking how to get hitters out. In Japan, this high contact league is all of a sudden not offering swing and miss in the places where he was already on the margins swing and miss wise. And now in Japan, you just kind of have to figure out, okay, if they're going to put it in play, where can I have them put it in play that it's not going to work for them? And then I think also in Japan, he realizes that maybe I'm more of a four-seam 12-6 curveball guy, which the natural traits on those two pitches were always very strong. But he was pitching primarily sinker slider because that was more organizational philosophy for Texas. So not even his own fault necessarily. The pitching philosophy of the organization he was in wasn't suited to his best profile. And I think he discovers that in Japan. And I think when he opens up that north-south attack angle of a four-seamer that can get up above bats and this 12-6 breaking ball, he always had a good changeup. So, like, I think his arsenal opened up in Japan, and he figured out how to go deep in games in Japan.
Is that more common in Japan? By the way, I know you're not a Japan expert, but that
Sure.
profile with the kind of the old school fastball, curveball. I know they have a lot of stuff that they throw over there.
Yeah, I think the fastballs just used to look like sinkers more than they do now. Now you're seeing a lot of four-seamers with ride at the top of the zone, and if a guy can sink it, he'll also still do that. But I think the curveball's been around for a while for a reason, but there are only a few guys who can throw a really true 12-6 breaking ball that could spin 28 to 3,200 RPM and have that real bite and power, and to be able to land it for strikes. So it's a hard thing to do. That's why a lot of guys go to the slider. It's shorter break, shorter action. You can control it better, and you throw it harder. But Nick, I think when the profile changed, to me, it's when the four-seamer at the top of the zone opened up. He already had a good sinker and he already had a good changeup, so it just gave him a couple more weapons to get off barrels. And when that happened, then I think the world opened up, and then he gets a chance to prove it again here in the big leagues and find a whole other path. I think he wanted to be a starter, but finds a path into a relief role. But shout out to Nick Martinez for being able to pitch at elite form wherever he is in the game, and also give your team, your manager, probably one of the more valuable assets in your entire pitching staff, that if you needed this guy to do any one thing in a series, start a game, come back between starts, and impact you in the seventh inning, that is a really rare trait. And I think I can't say enough good things about him. That's why I get excited when he takes a no-no into the ninth inning. And in this past week, he started started probably a week before that, got shelled, wasn't his best start, then comes out in a leverage inning as a reliever midweek, and then goes out and does this that next day or that next outing. So it shows the range of things he could do and things that he could do well. And I think what he means to the Reds and for that pitching staff is beyond just whatever an ERA says. It's like, but again, he does all the things right. Nick was one of the first guys that I remember really focusing on. It used to be called the Modus sleeve, and now it's called a Pulse, I think, which is basically like a sleeve that you put on, and it tracks almost every single throw that you make, if not every single throw. So I know that Nick is always throwing in the offseason with like a phone, and he's always able to measure where my intensity's at, where's my volume this week, down to the day, down to it spits out a grade that tells you, hey, you're good today to go this amount, and you're that. Most guys allow that to be subjective on their end. Oh, I feel good today. Like, I don't really know what my total volume has been. A good pitching coach will keep track of it, but I think what Nick has always done is and he's, knock on wood, remained remarkably healthy through a long stretch, thanks to his emphasis on strength and conditioning, but also he knows what's happening with his arm at all times, and he can always prepare and adjust accordingly, whether that be for a 5-day ramp up into a start where you got to go 100 pitches or 6 innings, or you got to be ready to go that night in the 7th. And you don't know when you're going to get hot. You might go in the 8th. And that's a whole different way to get prepared for a game. So to be able to impact the game both ways, there's a litany of reasons why that's way harder than people think it is. And to be able to bounce between those roles, even harder. So for this to be happening right now, I think he deserves his credit. I think, I hope this makes him a lot of money this offseason, because last year he got the qualifying offer, like $21 million offer on 1-year basis. That means his organization decided, like, yeah, he's worth that amount. And it's good to see him kind of have public reasons showing why.
4-WAR player that year. And just look at the numbers coming back from Japan. This is from 22 on. So I know we're not talking about ERA only, but ERA plus 109, 123, 143. Now this year, 109 innings over, triple digits all 3 years. That this year, not already 94 innings. If he, knock on wood, stay healthy, we're talking about career high in innings this year, almost guaranteed. So just a very unique weapon for Cincinnati. Who's different than their other guys, but pretty unique in his own way. I mean, it's like you just have to have a guy like this. He can fill so many holes.
And unique in his mindset too. I think you spend any amount of time around him and his girls, he has 3 daughters. And I think you spend any amount of time around him, he seems like incredibly balanced, but also when it's time to lock in, there is a clear the mechanism and for the love of the game thing that happens that he's able to do that I've really learned a lot from as a baseball observer, executive evaluator. Like I'm looking for more of what he does, because I think what that part of it is underrated in terms of his ability to leverage what a scout would say is slightly above average stuff, not elite premium stuff. Maybe the changeup is an elite territory, but like, how does that get this out of, maybe, slightly above average tools? And then when you spend any amount of time with him, it comes out. And so therefore I've used him. He impacts pitcher evaluation a lot more than he thinks he does. And then I've told him that he does, because I've learned a lot. Like, okay, you can get there if you do some of these things, and not all of those things are innate or stuff based. You can develop at the big league level, after the big league level, in Asia, come back and still make money. That's as good a story of perseverance and persistence as any. And so it's good to see him getting rewarded with that now financially and taking a no-hitter into the 9th. Like the whole baseball world focuses in. You get every Twitter update, like no into the 9th, stuff like that. So just cool for him to get a moment like that.
Look, we've not been around enough to know what old school really looks like, but I mean, it feels old school, man. You just look at the versatility, the innings. You look at the profile. Where's he elite? Walks, not getting hit hard.
Yep.
So it feels like when you hear, again, we weren't around for a lot of it, or we were just little kids. It feels like there were more guys like this back in the day that didn't get, they were durable, that ate up innings, that avoided hard contact, that threw strikes, that were professional in their approach, that protected their body. Not that they don't do it now, but those guys are Ferraris, right? It just feels like this is a guy that could have played really in any era, and obviously is having a lot of success in this particular era. For sure.
And I love putting his high school, our high school, on the map in terms of, an established big leaguer in the big leagues. As far as the Belen baseball program is concerned, that's a recruiting pitch. That's like something you would love to have happen, especially like what the odds were for it to be here. Yet here we are. So yeah, I can't say enough good things, and really excited to watch him. Things like this help you push into the deadline. And depending on how they're playing, I think he'll be a really interesting trade item or discussion no matter what, because any team can use what he does. Hopefully it's the Reds making a push, because I know that's where Nick is at, right, mentally. But I think if the Reds kind of fall off, you may see him as like a hot name trade deadline wise, because he's on an expiring contract, in this capability to do these multiple roles, which that importance, I can't tell you how much that gets magnified going into the postseason, where a guy can be, maybe he's available to you 3 times in a series, twice as a starter, once as a leverage late in the game weapon. That gives you a pitching weapon in your staff that it's hard to quantify how valuable that is in a postseason. But I think ask any postseason team and they'll grab that if they can. So I think if he's available in any capacity, that we'll see that. And I think we'll see him targeted aggressively in free agency as well.
Yeah, look, I don't know what his plan is. You might know better than me. And obviously you're always hoping for the best with injuries, but it feels like even though he's in his mid-30s, it's not like the end of the road here, right? There's some tread on the tires, maybe more so than the average person of his age, just with the way he gets down.
Again, get up close to him and see him, and you'll see this is a big, physical, strong man that spends a lot of time, money, and effort into making sure that exactly that he can disprove exactly that. Like, okay, the mid-30s doesn't have to be this kind of a death of a pitcher. For the guys that don't do all the extra things and that don't prioritize them at a crazy level, I think this is a natural point. The mid-30s are a natural point where things start to decline. But I think other guys have proven otherwise. You got Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, all these guys pitching well into their 40s. Schilling, this is Rich Hill has been pitching, deep, meaningful games into his late 30s, early 40s. Charlie Morton, and there's money to be made there as well. So that's a pretty good incentivizer to do it. But I think if you get up on him and you watch his between starts, you'll see like, okay, if I'm going to bet on a guy in his mid-30s, he needs to do XYZ. I think he does XYZ well. So, yeah.
Doing it on the mound, man. So shout out to Nick Martinez, one of our favorites here on the show. So I got some great questions from the chat, Adrian.
I need to address at least one of them, but I'll let you go first.
Here's one from Brandon. And Brandon, we got another. I know the Skenes question you want to get to here, but let's start talking about 12-6 curveballs. And we talked about Max Fried earlier.
Yep.
Would you say that he's got the best 12-6 right now, best movement?
I think he's like the closest. Biggest movement isn't always best movement. And I think biggest movement is most easily identifiable on TV. So I think like, remember Barry Zito? Barry Zito had like a ridiculous, and that may have factually been the best breaking ball, but there are a lot of guys with a big breaking ball that it looks, and it doesn't really play that way. So like, don't get deceived by the shape of it, but Max Fried, and I'd have to pull it up here in terms of spin. But if there's real true spin behind that breaking ball, then I'd say that's what gives it that like sharp, firm bite. But bigger doesn't always mean more effective with breaking ball break. What it can do, however, is if you can, I love curveballs as 0-0 strike stealing pitches, or in counts where you're expecting a fastball and you can flip in a breaking ball that kind of backs a hitter up and you don't want to swing at that. I remember Junichi Tozawa used to do this. He used to be crazy high percentage of first pitch 0-0, big loopy breaking ball that gets you in, and the hitter just, you're in a fastball count. So you, Max Fried has both, I think, where like elite effectiveness in terms of like there's good qualities behind that pitch. But it doesn't play like one of the best breaking balls in baseball. At least it isn't right now. I think it's sexier because it's huge. Yeah. It just looks like it. But Max Fried is his fastball run value is in the 100th percentile. So don't let it fool you. Max Fried's dominant pitch is the fastball. It helps that the breaking ball is, but don't get fooled by big shape. So I got to get to Canes Cats Heat because he's been on me about Angel Montas every show.
Yeah, we got to do some digging on that.
So Angel Montas is probably projected to be one of the top signees for this up and coming signing class for international free agents. But I am taking a bit of a principled stance against pushing this conversation into too young of a range.
How old is he?
I have to, let me see where Angel Montas is. Remember when I looked this up?
Because I know Canes Cat, I know one thing he's real focused on is this interplay between international
class of 2029 for the draft. So I think he's talking about a player that's
so he could potentially
in consideration for a draft. So like this path of should I sign free as a free agent or should I sign as a drafted player? I would need to get furthermore into Angel Montas specifically. But the point that I was making was I come from the side of baseball that has been forced.
Just real quick, just to clear. So he's talking about him going to college. I don't know if he goes to if he spends time in American high school or if he's
right
because they got him on the Blue Jays scout team,
right?
The Florida Blue Jays scout team. So, is that and this is
he's 14, a 2029 recruit, but he's able to get recruited this year by coaches for some reason. Can he make it to campus, or is he getting a couple million from some MLB teams in the international signing period this year? That's the part where I haven't dug, and I don't. This is my point. Like, I don't really want to because I think and this is not a popular take amongst international scouting directors, international scouts, for example, but I don't think scouting players younger is better. I think you're prone to more mistakes. I think the system should not be set up for you to even be talking about 14-year-old players, in my opinion, or freshmen or eighth graders on the U.S. side either. I think that it just puts it forces not only scouts to make decisions on kids and children that they're wrong on at a very high clip. If we're wrong about high school players, where they get, and we're wrong about college players still, we're wrong about guys in the big leagues right now still. How do you think we do?
Guys in AAA, AA.
How do you think we do at ages 13, 14, 15? So spending time on that side, I was always, I stubbornly stuck to as old of a player as we could evaluate. That's the group I want to spend the bulk of our time with. Now that runs counter to how the industry is going. The industry is going both collegiate and international, like going in the direction of like, let's scout this out even earlier and earlier. And I just fundamentally oppose that. And again, this is not a popular take at all, because I'm sure every other international scouting director would be here like, well, this is just what you got to do. If you're not doing it, you're not like, you're getting beat. And I get it. I understand it, but I don't like it. And I just don't want to get pulled there because like I don't want to reinforce like the hype of a 2029 player. We're still in the year 2025. I got projection windows like ahead of me. I can't be also factoring that in back there, but Latin America is where I cut my teeth. So it's a fair question. But I don't want to get into that necessarily, if that makes sense.
Now, Brandon agrees with you. And he had a question here. And it's funny. This is a question my son asked me. He was 10 years old. So I know it's a topic of discussion. And he says, he asked about, and Brandon's asking the same question, Paul Skenes. And Brandon's asking what the deal would look like. So I'm going to ask a two-part question. That's part of it. But also, what my son asked me is, does it make sense? They're not very good right now. They could be an unprecedented haul. I'm sure he heard it on YouTube or something like that. Again, with the fan hat, if I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, you have this player who's box office to the bone. You have him. You have some talented guys coming up between, the Clemson pitcher, and I'm blanking on his name, but he's a top 15 prospect. You got, Connor Griffin, who we just talked about. You got guys that could potentially, who knows what they draft now? They could draft one of these college guys that's in the majors next year. You could have a core of really exciting young players for a franchise that hasn't had a ton of juice in a few years. But I guess you could also just, do one of these franchise-altering trades. What would a trade for Paul Skenes look like? And knowing where the Pirates are, is that something you would entertain with the way you approach baseball?
I don't think you make this deal, and I don't think the GM gets to make this deal on its own. Paul Skenes is in a tier of player that this is an organizational decision overall, like ownership, kind of like what we saw with Rafi Devers. Like when that's like your biggest assets as a major league team, there are a ton of reasons that you shouldn't. I think you should not make that deal. You find a way as the Pittsburgh Pirates to develop, scout, and have a generational player as an asset. I think that the system should be positioned for that to be, you shouldn't just deal that just and kick the ball down the road, for future value. And those trades are dangerous. Franchise altering, maybe could go the other direction where you get a whole lot of like, not that much, especially like young and controllable as Skenes is already. If we're talking about 5.5+ years of control, the haul would be ridiculous. But also, you as a general manager, like, what is the upside for you to make that deal if you have to kick it all to the future?
Right.
You have to have some kind of cachet or have won at a ridiculous amount or be sitting on 2 World Series rings to think that you can survive the backlash that will come from that. Beyond just the removal of your biggest like war on your team, beyond that, like you lose so much in the way of fan cachet, fan capital. And you're just going to get ripped over however long the rest of the season is or news cycle. So that it doesn't feel like you make that deal leaning into it, kind of like the Luka deal or the, I don't know, we could give other examples, even this Devers deal. Like, I don't think if the Red Sox could change something, it'd be the way it was received, right? Because it hinders you no matter what. Even if the prospects you get are 5 elite top 100 guys, it's kind of in the moment, it's never enough. So I think the answer is you don't make this deal. I don't think anybody on the Pittsburgh Pirates wants to make that deal. I think that there's a surplus value argument to be made. Like if you get $400 million, $500 million coming back in surplus value, then you make that argument, but maybe some other general managers enjoying the fruits of that trade because like you're not going to be around to see that, to me, if you make a move like that. And I don't want to see that happen to Ben Cherington. Ben Cherington gave me one of my first jobs in baseball. But I just think at the end of the day, Pittsburgh Pirates ownership will dictate where this is going to go. Because also, you can hold on to Paul Skenes, but it's not going to be free for you to hold on to him long term. So there's going to be a point where arbitration comes around, or you want to sign an early extension, which they probably would like to do, but that's probably a huge number. So if you feel you're not going to be able to carry that, then maybe there's an argument to get out in front of that financially. If you can't carry it or you're not going to do it, wait it out until free agency, or you sign an extension. But if you can't do the extension and you know you can't do the free agency, maybe you can make the argument. But the revenue that guy's generating in the meantime to your organization, financial and just emotional, you can't pull that plug.
And who are they paying now? That's what I understand is, I understand how a roster can become unwieldy and you have to make tough decisions.
Yep.
But this is the Paul Skenes show. If you can't pay him and someone else can, I mean, who can you pay? Because there's no one.
Right.
It's not like they have a ton of guys making a ton of cash right now.
Well, Danny, this is where we get into how do you run your major league franchise? Do you run it as a public trust that you're just going to spend at the top level of how this operates, or are you going to be in the middle, or are you going to run it from a pure efficiency standpoint, lowest payroll possible with as much revenue as I could generate on the other side? And that's how the ownership group. It depends how you treat your entity as a business. That's why I think, for example, in the Devers thing, it's tough to swallow that you would need to make a financial argument for this trade if you're the Boston Red Sox. No, you're the Boston Red Sox. You can play at this level. You should play at this level. Your revenue dictates year over year that you can play at this level. But I'd argue, and we'll get into this in the next episode, I'd argue that's true now. Like right now, revenue sharing between TV rights deals and what you already start at every year needs to be around $200 million for each revenue sharing payee. So you start with $200 million in revenue plus the revenue you generate. And so if you're running a $40, $50, $60 million payroll against that annual revenue, there's a big gap there. So it's all about where do you want to operate on that scale. And I think that would dictate, what you can and should do. But Pittsburgh is a storied franchise with a whole region behind them. I don't see why Pittsburgh should be in this middle tier of it's a baseball market. You go there, they pack the house.
Legendary players. I mean, I go to their top prospects because that's what I was pulling up here. You have Bubba Chandler. He's in AAA. Yep. He's about to get to the majors. Athletic guy, former quarterback, Clemson recruit. I mean, exciting guy to have, especially pair these guys. Now, if this guy becomes a player, think of the marketing when you have two of those guys, right? You can market them together. Connor Griffin, I pulled up his stats this year. 19 years old, Sally League right now. If you combine his A and his A plus stats, 12 home runs, 37 steals, 343 at the plate, OPS 955.
One of the best picks of the draft.
Feels like Bobby Witt. I'm not saying he's going to be that, but I'm just saying it's that type of exciting player.
For sure.
If you can have Bobby Witt, Paul Skenes, and then another exciting pitcher, and they have other pitchers as well, not just the two I just mentioned. Yep. That's something you could sell and fill the house with.
That's a core.
And even if you don't pay everybody down the road,
right,
if you get 3 or 4 years of being the hottest show in town, that's got to be worth something.
Right. And here's another argument where I don't think the draft is the only way to supplement your roster. I want to give a shout out to a good buddy of mine, Justin Horowitz, who's the director of scouting for the Pirates. And shout out for making that Connor Griffin pick. That's you need things like that to happen if you're going to get and bridge this gap. And because you're seeing Paul Skenes right there, right? So you have to you're on a timetable whether you like it or not. It's kind of like the Angels were with Ohtani. You can't just sit on Ohtani and Trout for while this thing develops for you. So the draft is one way to do it, but what's stopping a team like that from making really smart trades, signing good 1-year deals in terms of guys that show up and perform on a 1-year deal? The problem is that can cost dollars. So it just depends on how you want to treat your franchise. I think it's hard to compete in the middle and in the bottom. I'm stating something very obvious, but it's true. Don't let the Rays fool you into thinking that this is sustainable to operate low payroll, high output. It's really hard to do. The Rays have their own special ways and special sauce, but they lose all their fans in the playoffs, right? You're not even selling playoff games when you get there because I'd argue because of the way that you operate the team, right? So it's not an optimal spot to be in to even be thinking should we be trading Paul Skenes? Because it means you don't believe in your major league roster. But I think there are things you could do in the short term, anchored to Paul Skenes, anchored to a Connor Griffin, anchored to a good core of position players that they do have. But it's not the place you want to be talking about your own organization from. But I don't think you move Paul Skenes under any circumstances. Not right now.
I'm with you. And if you do, look, I think with the Angels, they got obviously their money's worth with Ohtani. They didn't win anything, but would you say that his tenure with the Angels was a failure because they didn't win? I wouldn't. How many jerseys did they sell? How many games the profile of their franchise was raised considerably just having him on there. maybe at the end, right? That last half a year,
Right.
that last deadline,
Right.
could you move him and get something
Sure.
there? But I mean, if they would have traded Ohtani and there were injuries thrown in there, but traded him while his value was at the highest early on.
Anything in the game.
What would have done for that? I don't think it would have changed too
Maybe
much.
highest ROI in the history of baseball in terms of, because he was an amateur, so he had to sign for some nominal amount as an amateur.
Like Sasaki, yeah.
To then impact, I don't know, the biggest, quickest rise from what you paid versus what he arrived as, and relevance to your franchise.
Yeah.
Relevance to your franchise that you didn't really have, even with the best player in baseball playing for you, and Mike Trout at the time. So kudos to whatever happened to land Ohtani with the Angels at that point, when every team in baseball would have tried to land him in the exact same way. I will bet that the Dodgers approached their Sasaki situation and whoever else was in Sasaki with this same exact logic in mind. We have to win this recruiting pitch because it could change the trajectory of your franchise. You're getting a relatively free player that could provide you hundreds of millions in surplus value. That's what Ohtani was. We'll see on Sasaki. But that's how they treated the Sasaki process. The Sasaki process got treated with the same level of, or higher level intensity than Yamamoto that gets 300 million. But Sasaki will only sign for $5 million.
Yeah.
So but shout out to the Angels for having it, but you got to do something while you have it. So, and I think that's where the Pirates are, you have a generational arm. You have to, I don't think you could kick 3-5 years from now.
$875,000, by the way, is Paul Skenes' salary this year. You want to talk about surplus value? I mean, he's got some pretty good surplus value as we speak, and that's why the draft is so important. That's why we'll be covering.
He's got good endorsements, though. For sure, he's got good heavy endorsement deals.
He's doing just fine. But yeah, I think the Pittsburgh Pirates are coming out. The Paul Skenes business is good for the Pittsburgh Pirates. I would not be in a hurry.
No,
wait till you have to make that decision. I don't think that's when you get in front of. I think that's when you're forced to do.
Strong agree.
But anyway, that's why the draft is important. So we're talking about the LSU Tigers. Cade Anderson will be having a lot more draft coverage as we gear up for the big day. And of course, it's El Big League show. So we'll be talking El Big League. Record numbers on the live today. Appreciate everybody in the comments. Like and subscribe to the show. Share it. Tell your friends. We'll be covering the draft and the big leagues and international and everything else every single week. Adrian, man, appreciate you.
Appreciate you, man. Excited for this draft episode. I'm really excited to organize around the Major League draft. So stay tuned.
See you next week.